So I'm putting together this little experimental hydro of sorts, and I got to build what's kind of like a front canard for it. I'm not sure it's the right definition, but essentially the way I'm doing it is you got this, it's basically one ply lamination of 1708 with a little bit of unidirectional in there to add some strength. And then there's two of these, I call them core assemblies. They're, 1.25 inch balsa, and then they're surrounded by construction lumber, and they're going to get obviously bonded on with epoxy micro balloons. I'll laminate basically like just, I don't want to call it, non-structural, but enough fiberglass just around the edges where that lip is to seal the whole assembly together. And then I'll come back with a top layer of just, single ply, pre-made 1708. They'll just get bonded on flat. And then I'll have to just add a little more, 1708 unidirectional, because this is actually going to flex a little bit. So where it's flexing, you just want a little more fibers there. And that'll get bolted onto the front of the boat. But whenever I mix up some micro balloons, there's always extra, and I make little test pieces of sorts. So, this is be a test piece that I'll break to failure. And I'm also playing with another concept. That is, with composites, everybody loves the flowing curves and the organic shapes, but the reality is all your strength is really in line with your fiber placement. So this is, this is 1708. It's a biaxial, so you got fibers going 90 degrees to 90 degrees. So it makes for a good shear member, and then there's a little bit of chop mat just for to help the finish. But in this concept I'm playing with right now is literally just, take a shape of a part you want to make, route it out, fill that with micro balloons, come back, take your flat panels and just bond them top and bottom. And then afterward, you're going to cut everything out. You'll now have that, that edge of micro balloons, and then you can glass around it. Because you're always struggling with composites, especially when you don't have dedicated molds, to make that three-dimensional piece where your top and your bottom half, they come together in some kind of clean structural fashion. And with these prototype boats, I'm going to have to make tons and tons of these kind of composite parts. And in some cases, it actually makes sense to just make them out of wood. So with the Checkmate, the second Checkmate I'm putting together, another 17-foot Checkmate, and basically I'm going to make an 18-inch offset transom bracket for an Everroom V6. So it's pretty big outboard for this size boat. I mean, they're about 450 pounds. And I want to do some different stuff with the dynamic handling. This boat's getting a giant pad. It's getting what's essentially going to be like a wheelie bar. I want this boat to run in the Delaware chop like you'd expect like a 30-foot boat to run. Like I want this thing to do better than even like a 24 super boat or progression. It's just, pretty ambitious, I'll admit, but it's getting almost all wood construction, standard polyurethane adhesives. And the concept is when you work with wood, wood's actually good at dissipating stresses because it's flexible, it moves. And it's very, even when it does fail, it's very tolerant of damage. And I think the world is just, performance boats is getting so enthused with these fancy, synthetic foams and stuff. I think they're all fairly unnecessary for what we're trying to do. This boat, it has massive, massive stringers, and the stringers are just the same way you'd build a floor to a house. Your shear member is plywood, and then you have a structural lumber top and bottom. You have lots and lots of strength if you run spruce, pine, fir. I mean, that's how we build the floors in a house. Like, you can dance on them. You can have, keg parties on them. And the idea is just to build a boat, you know, on a relatively reasonable budget that you can absolutely beat mercilessly in the chop. So I'm looking forward to getting this boat together finally. I've had this hull for more years than I'd like to admit. But I just want a simple, fun, durable, I don't want to say expendable, but again, how many guys are going out with, you know, $500,000, you know, twin engine cats with two 450 Mercs and really beating them? You know, you see them go through hull over and people just criticize them. So I want something I can take in the Delaware Bay and just run mercilessly, and we'll do it. And I'll learn something going into. So that's where we're at. And yeah, this is the second half of, it's got to get sealed with epoxy before it goes together, because this, on this one, the balsa didn't really lay up real nice. You know, granted, I'm working with the first almost scrap pieces of balsa from the pallets, so I really got to hit this with a lot of epoxy microblend, so when I bond it on the final time, it doesn't just suck up the resin and leave me with all kinds of voids. Fortunately, it's hard to film all that stuff because, you know, once your hands get in the goo, it's kind of futile. You know, it just becomes I don't want to say a race against time, because the rack of stuff in this weather really takes a while to set up. I mean, this stuff is tacky for 2 or 3 days, at least a day and a half. But that's where we're at, and I'll make another video when it's all kind of set up and cured and we're finishing it off.